All right. What is up, YouTube and gun channel peoples? It is now 9 o'clock. So you're hearing me again because it is time for This Week Unloaded. Of course, I am Dot357. And we've got a nice little panel with us today. So let's go through the panel and see who all we got today. So we've got Gizzard Gary. How's it going, Gary?
Going good, thank you, and thanks for the invite.
Not a problem. As always, we've got Gunpowder Beauty.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening.
And of course, for round two, he was on Clearing the Chamber earlier with me and Gunpowder Beauty. And Black Cat is Snowy North Gunslinger. How's it going, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem, definitely. So, taking a look through, over on the gun channel side, we've got Moonfood out in the chat, Moonfood78 out in the chat, and Gizzard Gary over there. And just so everybody knows, I don't have a link handy to throw out in the chat right this second, but gunchannels.com, it's definitely the best place to go for any kind of gun chat. And it was like I said earlier, you get any kind of chat you're looking for. If you've got questions about almost anything, I can guarantee you there is somebody on Gun Channels that can answer that question. So definitely go over there and check out Gun Channels. Here, I got a link to throw up real quick for y'all. If it doesn't work, of course, you can type it in. And I've also heard add a hashtag to the end of it, or if you're my age or around my age, it's also known as a pound sign. But you can throw that on the end of it supposedly, and it helps it work. And then also I've heard deleting the end of it, which I've already done. So we'll see how that link works for anybody that wants to jump over on Gun Channels. And on the YouTube side, we have got two hottie. Oh, what was that?
Oh, so we're talking your age. Does that mean back when you were when the pyramids were still going up?
Sure.
Whoa. Okay.
Gunpowder
He's
might
only
be kind of
6
offended.
months older than me, and I'm in the prime of my youth. So, there's that.
All right. And on the YouTube side, so on YouTube, we've got two hotties out in the chat there. How's it going, man? We got Sean Green. We've got Gizzard Gary, you're in here. Rich White was out there. I don't know if he's in there or not. He says he's got something going on, so he's not going to be joining the panel tonight. John Brown Productions is out there. Tina, of course. How's it going, Tina? And then we also got Black Cat Outdoors. Well, assuming he's still in here. He jumped in at least to say he was second. So apparently, I guess he feels special there. Fluffy. So tonight is kind of an open forum. I want to let everybody, if you've got a topic that you want to throw out there for us to talk about, just throw it out there. But I did come up with something to start us off. And with the NRA show coming up, and I talked a little bit about it on Clearing the Chamber there towards the end. I made the comment of a lot of us going to the NRA show here in Dallas. Of course, me and Gunpowder are going, but I mean, it's like a 20-minute drive for us. It's nothing for us. But we've got some people that are coming in town to go to that show. And as far as I'm assuming everybody kind of knows, Mac, Military Arms Channel, Tim, he's kind of pushing along this not real activist. I guess you'd call it a protest. I don't know if I'd really label it that, because they're not actively going to be protesting in the sense of holding up signs and shouting, things at the NRA. But they're going to be going to the NRA show, and one of the days their plan is to wear their not real activist shirts that they actually have gotten off of Forged from Freedom. It's going to be him. I know Iraqi Veteran 8888, and then of course Sam from Forged from Freedom, and there's a few others. I know there's a few Gun Channels guys that are talking about doing it. And so with that being said, I really kind of want to throw it around the room. I know we beat the NRA topic to death. We always tend to talk about it. We always end up in a conversation about the NRA and what they're doing today and what they're saying today and what actions they need to take. But I really want to throw it around the room and kind of have a discussion about what we all feel about the NRA. You know, not just the ILA, just I'm talking NRA overall. You know, what do we feel really needs to be done? What do we feel has really been screwing up the NRA, which I know a lot of us are probably going to say the ILA. We're probably going to say Chris Cox. We're probably going to say Wayne LaPierre. But, you know, really think about it and put some, let's put some detail into what's some of the bigger issues we've seen, because we all go in and say that they're willing to give away our rights and willing to give an inch or even a mile sometimes. But just as been said before, that shouldn't really be a surprise to a lot of us. It's been happening for a while. And so with us really going into the NRA show and, you know, the heat kind of turned up on the NRA, you know, I think it's a good little topic to discuss tonight. And of course, like I said, if we have any topics that want to be thrown out there in the chat, feel free to throw them out there. If y'all have any topics on the panel, feel free to throw it out there and we'll definitely discuss it. It's kind of an open forum tonight. And I see Midnight Range jumped in. How's it going, Mohawk boy? All right, so let's go through the panel. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to necessarily just go through the panel. I really want to hear just kind of y'all jump in. What do you think the climate is, especially going into the NRA show? What do y'all think the climate is for the NRA? You know, the big thing I'm curious to see is how they're going to be approached with this show going on in Dallas, because, you know, we haven't really heard a whole lot from local people. So what do y'all feel really the climate is for them going into this?
I think the NRA has a lot of pissed off members, to put it lightly, coming in this year. So for me, my expectation and what I want to see is how they plan on repairing these membership, the anger that a lot of these members have towards them. And it's not only necessarily the fact that, yeah, they do like to give an inch or give a mile. The thing I'm most upset about is when it comes to any lawsuits or anything coming along from the NRA, they like to say that, yeah, we're going to start this lawsuit. And then they tend to push it off and another group ends up taking over for it. And what I don't think the NRA takes into account is sometimes by having a larger name, such as the NRA behind it, the name can do more than what money and financial side of things can do. Because the NRA represents 5 million people, to where if you get some of the smaller local groups, it doesn't represent nearly 5 million people. So that's a huge thing to take into account there. And then you have them with their letter about bump stocks. That really upset a lot of people this year. And to be honest, their push for the national reciprocity law did not seem to be there helping out. So you have a lot of these members that are extremely upset with them, and they do truly feel that they're not doing anything to be beneficial for them. And you've seen a bunch of us hop over and start supporting other gun rights organizations that we feel do better, such as the Gun Owners of America. And the thing that, unfortunately, the NRA doesn't take the approach of, from my view, is they don't take the approach of what Gun Owners of America is. GOA flat out says that their job is to work themselves out of a job. The NRA, that's not what it is for them. They're essentially, the broad spectrum of them is they're there to make a profit, which that's fine. They're a business. They are more than welcome to do that. But that's an unfortunate thing, is they aren't necessarily working towards bettering our rights. They're bettering to increase their bottom line, is kind of how I see it going. So for me, I'm not necessarily the happiest with the NRA. I think the NRA has a place? Yes, but unfortunately, it seems like they've kind of become the king of activist groups or gun rights groups, and I don't think that they're the proper people to have as that king of king group representing us. I think there's better ones out there. So that's just my opinion on the NRA. I'm excited to hear what everybody else kind of thinks and see what everyone else's thoughts are as well.
Well, I don't disagree with anything you said, Snowy, but I think there's more to it than that. I think when you talk about the NRA, we talk about the things that the NRA leadership has done and the things the NRA ILA has done, but we forget about the fact that they do represent 5 million gun owners, just like you and me. And I don't think you can throw baby out with bathwater here. I think we can possibly steer that ship the right direction, but what we've got to do is we've got to get the NRA to where it is more of a member-driven organization and not a corporate-driven organization, which is what it's become. I mean, basically, it's been 2 or 3 people, and the money that comes into it drives their policy and everything else, and the members don't seem to have a whole lot of a voice. But when you bash the NRA, in a way, you're also bashing those 5 million members who are nothing but good law-abiding gun owners. So you got to kind of be careful how much you trash it, in my opinion.
I do agree with that, but I would say too, like I said, I agree with some of the things both of y'all said. But here's my big thing is and I already kind of said it in the beginning. We talk about the NRA as if it's a complete whole group, which it is, but it's that whole group with a bunch of these divisions that they just kind of need to get rid of. Obviously, the ILA needs to be fixed. I wouldn't even say get rid of. They need to get the leadership out of that ILA position, get them off the board, and redirect the ILA. I think it would be a great idea to possibly, do a big separation, a complete separation of ILA, have the NRA's ILA still be called that, the NRA ILA, and then have your NRA. Kind of like there was a chat yesterday with Clover, and that was something that was brought up. I believe Ghost was bringing it up, talking about how when you discuss the NRA as a whole, and for instance, membership dues was a big thing that came up. There's a program they're pushing now that I actually think is a great idea. Not that it's necessarily going to work, but they're talking about when you go to sign up and you put your membership in, giving you an option of saying, I want my membership dues to go towards education or one of these other programs. Basically, you can steer it away from the ILA, and then suddenly they see, wow, we've got 5 million members, and 3.5 million or 4 million said they don't want any of their money going to the ILA. That might set a standard there.
Well, so one big thing, and I agree with some of what Gary said, but one big thing I do see kind of continuing to happen is everybody says that we need to steer the NRA in the right direction, which in the long term of things is correct. That's what we need to do. But I look at the NRA as if I'm talking about a boat. This is a boat that's got about 5 million different holes in it for multiple different reasons. So at this point, going through and actually trying to steer the boat, it would be pointless. You're steering a sinking ship, in my opinion. So instead, what we need to focus on is actually fixing it. Now, everybody talks about the board of directors for the NRA, and there's 75 members of that board of directors. You've got I forget who's all on there. I know Ted Nugent's one of them, but all these 75 people on there. And unfortunately, everyone thinks that the board of directors has a large amount of power, which they don't. Essentially, the board of directors, what they can change is what toilet bowl cleaner they're using, or what letterhead they have, or small
what
stuff.
ply of toilet paper.
I'm going to say this much, though. I will say this. I do agree on that, but there's one thing I've got to say. The big focus when it comes to the board of directors, because they do get a little more of a vote, the more you start talking to people and start hearing about what goes on within the NRA, like Julia Golub, I can never pronounce her last name right, recently got voted onto the board of directors. And, I follow her on a lot of the social media. Ghost actually keeps in contact with her, and I've seen and heard different things about what's going on within the board, and they do have a little more power than some people put on. They may not be making all the major decisions for the NRA, but they do have a little more power. The big problem I see with that board is exactly something you said, and that's 75 board members. They do not need 75 board members on there, because you're really, to me, it's too easy, especially with a group that their elections, their voting isn't made public and not everybody knows about it. You've got that ability to sit there and throw 50, you throw 15 or 25, 15 to 25 people in that everybody loves and thinks will do a great job, and you squeak in 50 other people that don't really give a damn. And so now you got that problem also in the NRA.
Well, so here's one big question is I agree. 75 members on a board of directors is absolutely insane. But here's my question with that is, what company can you name out there? And I would truly be interested in seeing what people have to say with this, that has a board of directors that the board doesn't actually control what goes on. And sure, I put it very in a kind of joking way. The board of directors doesn't have nearly as much power as what they should. But why is that? I mean, I work for Amazon. Our board of directors and our investors, which in the NRA, the investors are not only the businesses that they're working for, but it's also the 5 million people represented. The board of directors takes all of that into account in most companies. But when it comes to NRA, we're okay with saying, well, yeah, we get that we have the board of directors, but the board of directors aren't the ones who actually make a lot of these decisions. They're not the ones that make a public statement. And that's what bothers me, is it should be the board that's making these public statements representing the NRA when it comes to 5 million people, not just Wayne LaPierre or any of them. They shouldn't be the only ones making that public statement. It should be coming from the board of directors. So that's where I get confused on why a company that has 75 members of board of directors, why it's so large, and why that board of directors doesn't have the power that they should. Instead, it falls to a very minuscule amount of people that don't necessarily look for our best interests. And I hate to say it, but most NRA members seem to be okay with those people being the decision makers instead of the board that actually is supposed to represent the entirety of the company, including not just the corporate interest, but also including the 5 million members.
Okay. Can you guys hear me? Am I coming through?
Yes, you are.
All right. You asked for one company where the board of directors doesn't have any power. I can name one other company, and that would be World Wrestling Entertainment. Vince McMahon owns just about the majority of all the stock in that company. He controls everything they do, even though it's a publicly traded company and has a board of directors. So I just wanted to answer that one right off. Second, I want to apologize for being late. We were having a plumbing issue with the bathroom. And third, rather. Well, I agree with most what Snowy said. I don't think the general member of the NRA is as pissed off as what people want to think they are. We have some big voices like Tim from Military Arms Channel, Yankee, and some others who are pissed off and are making a big stink about what's going on. But the general membership at large, I don't think is anywhere near as pissed off as what it may seem to be because of the voices that are the ones that are pissed off. So I just wanted to throw that out there and see what anybody thought.
I'll say this much too. I'm not going to tell anybody to throw money at the NRA, especially right now. But if you haven't been one donating in the past and you want to complain about where everybody's money's going, that's kind of, I'll say this, it's kind of hypocritical to say that. I don't agree with anything the NRA is doing right now, the ILA. Let me straighten that out, the ILA. Because I do agree with having a lot of the educational programs and everything they had. I don't agree with what the ILA is doing. But that's just the thing. If you're not putting money towards them, how do you expect to ever have a say? And so that's kind of the thing. But I'm not going to tell anybody to go out there and fund the NRA right now, especially with everything that's going on. My membership ran out because I had not made payments recently because I thought I was paid ahead. And so me and Gunpowder, ours just recently ran out this year, and I planned on sending an email to them, letting them know I'm not renewing and why I'm not renewing, because they keep sending me letters telling me to renew. And there's not going to be a renewal, and there's a good reason for it. So I'm going to let them know that part of it.
Yeah, see, and that's a big thing that I do want to bring up is I unfortunately am 100% paid up for my life membership with the NRA. If I were still on a payment process, or if I was doing a yearly membership, or however they charge it for the non-life members, I would probably cancel my subscription at this point. But what I've seen a lot of people saying they're doing and what they're doing is they're rescinding their life membership to the NRA. Now, if you rescind your membership, how do you ever expect something to get fixed? And especially you paid all that money. You have a voice. You've spent your money. You are a lifetime member. Don't rescind your information, but make sure your voice is heard and make sure you're contacting the people that you need to. Make sure you're sharing your displeasure with them. I mean, I've sent multiple emails saying this is what I'm displeased with. I'm not happy with it. Now, the NRA, like I said, I do believe they have some points where they belong. Like you said, the training aspect of it. Most places around nowadays, they look for NRA certified instructors in order to teach concealed carry classes or teach training classes, which is great. The youth programs that the NRA does, that's something that I think is absolutely amazing. And my displeasure isn't necessarily with the whole of the NRA, it's more so with the ILA. So when it comes to NRA, they have great programs, but again, don't think like Tardot said, if you're not donating to the NRA or if you're not a member of the NRA or if you're canceling your membership necessarily just because you're displeased with them, you can't expect to fix anything from the outside. I mean, unfortunately, the NRA, they don't give a damn what non-members say most of the time. If they start losing a bunch of money, then they're going to. But if you're on the outside talking in and you have actually no membership with them, then you're doing nothing to actually help because you can sit there and complain. But at the end of the day, are they getting their money from you? That's going to be the biggest question.
Well, and another thing, honestly, that kind of agitates me about all organizations, and I'm not going to say none of them are willing to team up, but you know, the comment was brought up earlier about, for instance, the NRA taking over a lawsuit or something to that extent, and they'll just give it up and hand it off, and it ends up going, for instance, the GOA or Second Amendment Foundation or somewhere for them to head it up. My honest problem with that part of it is why do we not see these groups teaming up? I get it. Y'all are all kind of in the boat for trying to get the same members, but just combine your might, your power of having that many members, that much funding.
Yeah, and that's,
you know, there's nothing we couldn't do.
That's a big thing, and I'm kind of glad you brought that up because it's something that I don't really think to mention a lot of the time. But I agree. Why are these organizations not working together? And why do they look at it as they're competing for different members? I'm sorry, I know a bunch of people that are members of the NRA that are also members of the GOA that are also members of multiple different organizations. So for me, it's one of those things. Don't look at it as a competition because at the end of the day, when you're fighting for gun rights, you're not fighting as a competition for business. You should be working with it and having as many people represented as possible, especially when you are starting to look at, hey, let's get a push for national concealed carry reciprocity or something along those lines. It comes down to, if you guys work together, you not only have the 5 million in the NRA, but you've got, 2 million in GOA. So you've got people that cross over, and it's a good opportunity for you guys to seize as much power and put as much information out there as you possibly can.
All right. Yeah. And that's, you know, a lot of good points there. I will say, whether you're talking about the NRA, GOA, the Second Amendment Foundation, any of these organizations, even on the local level, it's very agitating to see the NRA be willing to hand over rights, but to say they're not fighting all of the fights, that's something that falls to all of us too, and that's kind of the part has bothered me when we talk about it too. Is, you know, we can sit here and put down the NRA all the time, but what is ever each person doing? Because the NRA only extends so far, and we know they're willing to negotiate our rights. But if you're not stepping in and saying, hey, I don't agree with what the NRA is saying, and start putting your voice out there, then you can't expect any results, any good results at least.
Yeah, and it kind of boils down to, and we talked about this earlier, is unfortunately in the firearms community, and I understand everybody has a life, they have kids, they have things that go on, but it also comes down to, I hate to say it, but gun owners tend to be pretty lazy when it comes to this stuff. They'll say they're pissed off and they're upset, but when it actually comes time to take any action or get off their rear ends or do something, or something as simple as turn on a camera and record a video or make a post on Facebook or a social media platform, unfortunately, it seems like everybody wants to say they're pissed until it's time for them to do something. And that can't be the approach you take. I mean, I look at it this way. We as gun owners are gun owners. We enjoy our rights. If we compare ourselves to use an Olympic athlete, for example, do you think an Olympic athlete, if they said, yeah, I really want to win this, and then didn't go out and train and do anything ever, do you think that they would get to the point where they're actually competing and winning gold? No. And that's the same way that it's got to be approached when you're fighting for your rights, especially when you're fighting for your rights, is you can't just say you want to do something. You actually have to take the action for it. I'm not saying you have to be some YouTuber who's posting a video daily, or even somebody that sits on a panel chat like this, or some Instagrammer with 1 million followers. But most people have a Facebook account or some form of social media, and it may not seem like it, but your friends are considered to be an outreach. So even if you're just making a post like that, that's all that it can take sometimes, is to voice that out and get the knowledge out to people. So it's one of those things that's, unfortunately, I get upset with the firearms community because everybody's, not everybody, but a good portion of the gun owners seem to be lazy when it comes to actually taking action. They just want to say they're angry, but when it comes to show and do action showing that they actually are angry, most won't actually take care of it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I want to get back to my point about the membership not being as angry as what we may think they are. I've heard numerous people who are NRA members that I know not only say they didn't care that the NRA sponsored the whole deal with banning bump stocks nationally, but they actually support the NRA on doing it because they see it because of the whole Las Vegas thing as being something that just gets people killed. That they don't care. There are a lot of people in the NRA membership who don't care that the NRA is doing things like that. And they not only do they not care, but they agree with them doing it. And that's a big problem. If you got people in the firearm community who don't care that they're taking bump stocks away, that's a problem.
I guess one thing that I would say to that, and Rich, I personally don't know how old you are or what type of friends you keep or anything like that. But me, I'm 26 years old, and I tend to deal with a lot of people that are younger in the firearms community. I'm talking 30 and below. It seems like, unfortunately, a lot of the time there's that age gap that's working against each other when it comes to stuff, especially when it deals with the NRA, because you have a lot of the members that are, we'll call them the above 40, that don't care about AR-15s, or they don't care about the bump stocks. When the NRA does that stuff, they're okay with it because they only view it that way. But then, unfortunately, my generation, the millennials, tend to be lazier than hell and won't actually go out and fight for saying, hey, no, we're a huge part of this membership as well. But instead, they won't go out and say to these older members, hey, you guys may not like them. You may not think they're useful. You may not think that they serve any purpose, but we, the younger people, do. And that's something where I think sometimes the age gap and the generational gaps can fight against each other, because you do have NRA members that are from every walk of life and from every age group as well. Every race, ethnicity, religion, you've got it covered in the NRA. And that's something that I see as being a big problem, like you said, is certain people in the NRA are okay with this happening. And then you have certain people like myself who voice their opinion saying that they're not happy with it. Then you have the other group from both age groups just sitting there and being lazy and not doing anything about it. So that's where I see an issue. kind of in the NRA as well.
Yeah, and I'm watching out in the chat right now, and I'm seeing some comments out there, some good ones. You know, people are talking about, like Midnight was out there talking about they should be trying to pump us up, not the other way around. Why do we have to beg them to fight for the Second Amendment? They should be more aggressively proactive, which I definitely agree with. If we're giving them the money, they need to be more aggressive. They need to be out there. But just as we said, we can't expect every fight to be fought for us. But if I'm giving them, $20 a year, $35 a year, whatever the amount is, they need to be out there doing their job. And there was another comment I did see out there about, where did it go? Oh, Sean Green saying that the NRA should care because they won't get my money ever as long as Wayne LaPierre is there. Now, when we talked about that, and we talked about not putting the money in there, I do want to throw out there that the reason we say that is because with 5 million members, or even if they lost 1 million and it was 4 million, if it was that drastic, you might start seeing some changes and some questionnaires going out and them trying to fix what they're doing. But with 5 million members, and say they lose 100 members, 200 members because of this, because a lot of people are life members. A lot of people, like we just made the comment about, are kind of fuddish and make the comments of, they really don't care about bump stocks or whatever else. Because of that, and because you got people that are going to stay with the NRA, if it's not a group initiative of making a mass exodus from the NRA, you're not going to see a change. Out of 5 million members, I can guarantee you they don't really care about a couple hundred. Now, if you start seeing mass emails coming in saying, even if it's 1,000 emails, you start seeing those comments that are going directly to the NRA, like what I was talking about, sending them a notification of why I'm not going to renew. If you start seeing a lot of those emails and it's being brought to their attention, at that point, that you may start seeing some changes, because now they're starting to realize that, we've seen us losing members, but here is them directly telling us why from a member themselves. We're not hearing it as a mass group. We're hearing each member. We've got, 1,000 emails or 5,000 emails that all say the same thing.
Well, yeah, and that's a big thing to remember too, is look at the NRA, mainly the ILA, as a lawyer. If you were going to traffic court, or just say you were in a self-defense situation, are you going to bet all your chips on that money? Sure, or on that lawyer. Sure, you're giving that lawyer money, but does that guarantee that that lawyer is actually going to win you the case? No. And it's the same thing with the NRA. Yeah, we shoot money to them every year, or some of us are life members, to hope that they do the right thing. But at the same time, just because you send them money doesn't mean that that's all that you should do. If there's something when you're in a court case that you can do that's going to help the court case, you should do it, instead of just sitting there and letting your lawyer play for you. It comes down to the same thing with the NRA. It's just because I gave them my money doesn't mean that I'm going to be only expect them to fight for my rights. I'm still going to put in my effort, my blood, my sweat, my tears, and my time to make sure that my voice is still being heard, not only from the NRA, but from myself as well.
Yeah, I'm like you, Snowy. I'm a life member too. In fact, I'm an endowment level life member. I paid all of $600 to get to that a few years ago through Midway USA, but I'm not giving him another penny until changes are made. They're dying for me.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how you guys are, but I get notifications from them in the mail after every single one of these mass shootings. Well, start donating to us. You're not getting another penny of mine until you can prove to me that you're actually doing what you guys are supposed to be doing. But that doesn't mean that just because I'm unhappy and I'm not giving them money, I'm not going to make sure that they don't understand why I'm upset. And every time I get one of those notices, it takes me all of 10 minutes to write an email and send it off. I make sure to go through and send them, hey, I got your notification asking for money today. I'm not sending it because you guys are still continuing to do this, or you have done that. And I send that email off. Now, whether it gets deleted or read, I don't know, but at least I'm doing something to show them that, hey, I'm displeased with what you're doing currently.
Definitely. One thing I do kind of want to bring up, and this is something that's it's been something I've thought about back and forth, and I kind of want to see maybe what everybody thinks on this too. And that's okay. We know we all have a problem with the NRA, with what they're doing. We know we are all for a protest to the point of the NRA to get their attention and let them know what they're doing wrong. What is everybody's feelings about what's going on with the gun community now, as far as, for instance, we've talked about the USCCA, the Alien Gear holsters with, their deal that they've had going on with Springfield, where, they've used a lot of Springfield Armory guns to either model a holster or model on a cover of a magazine, things like that, or a lot of ads from Springfield. And basically by proxy protests. We're getting to the point, I start seeing us go down as a community, go down this rabbit hole, that it's now becoming that we're not just going to protest Springfield Armory or the NRA or whoever else. We're going to protest this organization because they do stuff with the NRA or they use Springfield Armory guns. And then all of a sudden it becomes, we're going to protest this other organization because they put an ad in the USCCA magazine and USCCA deals with Springfield. Or it starts becoming a basically, let's by proxy just start basically accusing everybody of doing the same thing that this one organization did, just because they use that as a platform to kind of show something off that they have, if that makes any sense to everybody.
Well, that's something that's interesting. So I'm one of the people that I am canceling my USCCA membership because I don't agree with them promoting Springfield as much as they have. Now, with that being said, that's one company that I feel, hey, you guys are a concealed carry insurance. You're not here to promote a firearm or anything along those lines. Why are you promoting Springfield so much? But then when it comes to a company like Alien Gear, I don't see the purpose or the point in protesting them. Look at Alien Gear's website once if you haven't. Alien Gear makes holsters for every single firearm out there. That's why they are one of the largest names out there as a holster manufacturer. Just because one company did something wrong, they're not supporting that company directly by making a holster for them. They're supporting people that, hey, maybe they don't understand. They're supporting them by making a product that is useful for that item. Granted, if you go out and buy a Springfield Armory and know what they did, then that's on you. But them as a free trade company, they're supposed to go out and make a product that is useful for people who use a certain product. They don't support Springfield directly. And granted, sure, they've had Springfield in their ads, but if you actually pay attention to recently, they learned from that mistake and they don't actually use Springfield nearly as much to promote their stuff. It's been more Glocks and Smith & Wessons lately than anything else. But that's one thing to take into account is you can't hold every single company liable out there for a decision they made. If you're displeased with a company because they are doing that, that's your right to be displeased with them and to not use them. But don't start taking it out on everybody, because eventually what that's going to do is that's going to start alienating a lot of different companies from doing that. Hey, if I do work for one company, then everyone's going to protest me. And then it starts going down the rabbit hole.
All right.
Well,
so there's something I want to throw out there because of kind of what you're saying and what I'm seeing in the chat. Because like Midnight Range made a comment about, he thinks it's BS that a company that depends on the Second Amendment would utilize a company that backstabs the Second Amendment. Duh. I agree with you slightly, but I want to tell y'all one thing. Go pull up a list of companies that have supported or do support the NRA. Go pull up a list of holster companies or any other company that has promoted or used Springfield, or that Springfield has assisted them in, for instance, holding an expo or anything else. and see how many companies you're going to be able to actually buy firearms, ammunition, holsters, or gear from. That list is going to get really freaking small, really freaking fast.
I was going to make a similar point because I just entered a contest online where that's co-sponsored by Crossbreed Holsters, and what are they giving away? They're giving away a Springfield Saint and a Springfield XD. Am I going to not in the future maybe buy something from Crossbreed Holsters because they're co-sponsoring a gun giveaway with them? No, because like you said, if you go and you boycott every business because they might be doing something in conjunction with another company you don't like, eventually you're going to run out of people you can buy stuff from.
Well, yeah, and here's
not only that, but you start boycotting every company that has to do with it. Just take the NRA for the best example. Boycott every company that has to do with the NRA. See how long the Second Amendment's actually going to last just based off of what we can actually buy.
Well, so here's something. If you want to see what companies you couldn't work with, there's a really fun thing going on in about a week. The NRA show is going on. So go to the NRA's website, look at what companies are going to be displaying at that event. You won't be buying a Glock anymore. You won't be buying a Colt anymore. You won't be buying an IWI Tavor. You won't be buying 90% of holster manufacturers. You won't be buying a Car Arms. You won't be buying multiple knife companies, because technically by them paying money to have a booth at this event, they're supporting the NRA. And that 90% of those companies are the large ones that are really popular out there. So that'll leave you, what, maybe 10% of the market to use? Can't boycott everything because they have some form of association with some company that you may be unhappy with.
Okay, so I may be way out in left field here. If I am, please let me know.
You're always out in left field.
Shut up, Tardot. Okay, so if you go and you're boycotting these gun manufacturers, these holster companies, all of that stuff, isn't that in the end really hurting your local gun shops and stuff like that, because people are no longer buying the product that are in their stores?
Yeah, exactly.
If you look at it, by the time that Springfield Armory XD, whatever, the XDS, XDM, whatever one you were maybe looking at before Springfield pulled all this nonsense in Illinois, and you decide you're not going to buy that Springfield, you're not hurting Springfield. Springfield already got their money. As soon as they shipped that gun off to a distributor, they were paid. The ones you're hurting are that distributor and the gun dealer who then buys that gun from that distributor. You're not hurting Springfield directly at all.
So really boycotting these big
missiles and whatnot.
Yeah.
You're not hurting Turkey by not buying a Janik. Turkey already got their money. It's the same situation.
Yeah, so boycotting these companies and stuff like that, you're not really doing anyone a favor, because now this local gun shop has to close its doors because nobody's buying whatever's on the shelf. They're not able to move the product that they had before because people decided to go boycott this, that, and whatever. How is that really taking a stance on anything? I've never tried boycotting anything before in my life, so I'm a little new to all of this conversation. But wouldn't something be more, I guess, productive of finding other ways than boycotting a company? Like, I don't know, just Ghost and Clover, they were getting on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of that using hashtags. So why not sit there and do something that you can use social media to address what the problem is without hurting businesses, that you're not actually hurting the business you're targeting. You're hurting the smaller businesses, and that seems a little...
Well, so that's just
not the point.
And
me boycotting USCCA isn't affecting any local dealer or any middleman or any...
Yeah.
any of that. It's hurting the USCCA directly by me not supporting them.
Well, now I'll say this about you, boy. You doing your, ending your membership of the USCCA, and the reason I think that's a good thing is you were already talking about it, where they've actually, I guess you notified them or whatever, and they got in touch with you about wanting to talk to you. If that really does happen, and they talk to you and try to follow through with what's going on, why, are you, unhappy with us, then I would actually, if they would change what they're doing wrong, I would feel more faithful to a company at that point, because they realized somebody said, hey, we're screwing up. And, at that point they were like, okay, we're going to fix what we were screwing up. If that makes sense to you.
That's the thing is, I think, and I don't want to make it sound this way, but I think part of the reason that I was actually contacted is because when I wrote them my email saying that I'm canceling my membership and why, I made it known that I am a Wisconsin resident. They are a Wisconsin-based company. I made it known that I have almost 500 followers on Instagram, that I am a YouTuber, and that I also deal with not only my YouTube channel, but I also talk to people with up to, I think the highest I put on there was 190,000 when I had originally sent them this email, because I told them I deal with these people directly and I talk to them on a consistent basis. And I think that was part of the reason why they got back to me. And unfortunately, I had to use some stuff as kind of a leaning on them tool for them to even be able to hear me. But if I'm able to get it to where maybe they'll look at what they're doing and why it's pissing people off, then I'm not afraid to sit there and kind of lean on them. The other thing is I was able to bring up the fact USCCA is currently who my security contractor everybody uses for their concealed carry insurance. We have over 100 people that work for our company, which is in the grand scheme of things considered to be a small security contractor. But when you're talking about, hey, if I talk to these people and explain to them why I'm canceling, maybe it'll start affecting them. And that reaches out on my Instagram page and reaches out on YouTube. And then it also reaches everybody in my security contractor and their families who have USCCA. Then I think that's part of the reason. So it's one of those things. Don't just look at it when you're talking to these companies or when you're boycotting these companies or telling them you're displeased. Don't only look at it as if it's affecting yourself. Make sure you make it known that, hey, it's not only me that this could affect by me canceling this, it's everybody that I come into contact with. And that's something that's important.
And I'm watching the chat, and I know Rich just responded out there to some of the stuff, but and what Rich is saying is kind of what we're all getting at is I'm not really looking to go buy a Springfield now, especially considering what they've done. Not that I was really looking for one beforehand. I did own one, but I traded it off. But at the same time, I'm not going to, just like Rich said, I'm not going to punish a company that may have done business with Springfield or may have done business with the NRA, because there's so many companies that do business with both of them. Like was mentioned earlier, I would love for everybody to pull up the list of companies attending the NRA show. I'll tell you right now, there is a ton. I've already been going through it and trying to figure out where we're going when we get to the show, but there's a ton of companies going to this thing. So I can almost guarantee you Smith & Wesson, Ruger, I know Ruger for a fact, Chris Vector, and a bunch of others. If you're thinking about buying them and you're wanting to protest the NRA by affecting the companies that affect them, you need to start marking off all major gun manufacturers on down that list. Well, and so probably a lot of custom manufacturers.
That's another thing, and I would love to actually sit down and talk to Yankee about this too, but one thing that has been brought up in the firearms community is that boycotting firearms manufacturers or companies that do a promotion for the NRA every year because people are upset with the NRA. And I forget who it was that he brings up a lot. I think it was Cheaper Than Dirt or something, where they do their yearly roundup for the NRA, which that's their choice. They're a free business. But here's the thing. If you're going to start going that far, you got to start.
Anybody who wants to protest Cheaper Than Dirt, feel free. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, but
after all the crap that went down years ago.
But my big thing with that is, Well, so my big thing with that is if you're boycotting them because they do their NRA roundup, and granted, they've done their shady crap before, but if you're doing or I guess if you're boycotting because they're doing something for the NRA, then you need to start looking at, okay, you just bought a brand new Smith & Wesson. Smith & Wesson in every single box that you get has an NRA promotion in it. Ruger has an NRA promotion in it. Glock has an NRA promotion in it. So you got to start looking at it that way. It's like, how far do we take this before we finally call it enough? Just because they may support the NRA, does that mean you're not going to go out and buy a M&P or a Shield, or are you not going to go out and buy a Glock 19?
Now, and honestly, I haven't had them sign me up when I bought a gun for the NRA. But I would say this much for those of y'all that have, and you've run into that, if you're able to, turn them down. Turn them down on getting signed up for the membership. Just say, I want my gun. That's it.
Yeah, and I don't think they automatically sign you up for it. I think they just, like, they send out promotional material inside their boxes. So, like, we just got 100 brand new M&P 2.0s. And one thing that we do when they come in is every single one of them gets pulled out of the box. And all the useless crap that's not the owner's manual and all the accessories for the gun gets thrown into the garbage can. I can tell you out of every single one of those, I just pulled out NRA certificate or NRA promotional material from them. So it comes down to one of those things. It's like, how far do you guys really want to take it? I get it. If there's something that a company does, like Cheaper Than Dirt, where you absolutely feel like they need to be boycotted, that's fine. But just because they necessarily work with the company, or they co-sponsor something, or they co-promote something, then you need to kind of step back. Just like if you start looking at that, the IDPA co-promotes or uses some companies that promote the NRA or have done some shady stuff in the past. They use them as sponsors. It's like, are they not supposed to use somebody who's willing to give them money to help them continue running these events, which a lot of people benefit from? Or do you at some point just draw a line? And CloverTech actually just put it really well in the chat. He says, boycotting because they are a sucky company you don't want to deal with, and boycotting because of some tie somewhere are two different things. That said, retailers and manufacturers are different too. And that's a huge thing to remember.
Exactly.
All right. Does anybody else have anything they want to throw in on that comment? You still with us, Rich? I hadn't heard you in a bit.
Yeah, I'm here. I was talking with my son about something, so I didn't even hear what the comment was to even voice anything on it. Sorry about that.
It's okay. We got kids. I totally understand.
Oh, we were still on the whole boycotting a company because of basically, whether it's, basically boycotting by proxy, just because they're associated with the NRA or somebody. We were still on that.
Essentially, the way that I think it boils down to is boycotting by proxy is crap. Boycotting a company directly is the only smart way and the only way that you're actually going to make anything known.
Yeah, I still think it depends on the company, because if you got to go through layers to get to that company, I don't think it's going to be as effective. It's not like the civil rights deal where they were boycotting restaurants because they had white and black only policies or anything like that. That's a different situation. In those situations, I think boycotts can work. But when you're boycotting a company and you're having to do it through another company, I don't think that's going to work.
All right. If nobody else really has anything on the topic, we can either keep this going or jump into any other topics anybody else wants to discuss. Anything y'all have seen in the news or anything like that?
I guess the only thing that I've seen that was kind of interesting, so I talked about it, I think, a couple weeks ago on this show, is David Hogg had proposed boycotting companies like Vanguard and larger investment groups that have any ties to firearms manufacturers. And I think it was Vanguard had made some type of public statement, or somebody from the company made a statement saying that his boycott hasn't affected them in the least because they have an option where if somebody doesn't want to go through and boycott or doesn't want their money going towards firearms, they have a specific investment program for that person. But I find it funny because every company that he said to boycott has pretty well said that, yeah, his little boycott didn't affect us at all. So I think that's something good. And I think it's people starting to wise up that, hey, just because they happen to work with the company in the firearms industry doesn't affect anything when he starts to boycott us.
Well, and you've seen it, and it's been said before. You know, all of these movements. Not that we need to let our guard down, but just like you're starting to see, it starts losing steam. And you know, I can say, you know, I've seen some headlines talking about, you know, David Hogg, but it's fewer and far between. And so you're starting to see that movement start to lose its steam because the people are kind of getting to the point where it's like, okay, we've heard this 1,000 times over the past, you know, 2 months, and so you're starting to see that happen.
I don't think it helps David Hogg much either that he's a little douchebag who shows absolutely no respect for anybody, including his own parents. I think that was a major turnoff that he's and his movement's going to suffer from as well. I think if they would have been more respectful, particularly him, their movement may have gained a little more traction with kids and whatnot, but even kids are like, whoa, this guy is way too over the top even for us at this point.
Yeah, I think he started to lose traction, and the Parkland kids started to lose traction when they started saying go and confiscate guns and take all the guns away. Because for some reason that seems to be something where you get some on the anti-gun side that see that as, hey, that's completely okay saying it. But most on the anti-gun side realize as soon as you start saying we're taking all guns and all guns need to be confiscated, that's when they realize that they have just lost any support that they potentially could have gotten from anyone on the gun side. Because as soon as you start talking about confiscation, then you lose any support from anybody. So I think that's part of where they started to fall off with their support group as well.
All right, guys, I'm gonna leave it open and leave it to y'all. Since it's already past the hour, I'm gonna go ahead and jump off. But I hope everybody has a good night.
Yeah, you as well, Tardot.
Yeah, I've got to jump off too. We're probably going to have to push my dad home. His truck died. So hope everybody has a great night. And thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, have a good night.
You have a good one too, Gunpowder, and hope everything works out. So
did anybody else have a topic?
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask. Anybody else have anything they want to talk about? Gary, you've been quiet. Got anything you want to talk about?
No, I really don't. We've covered a lot of good topics this evening, I think.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, I guess, to kind of round up the discussion we have been having is essentially the way that I see it and what I think people need to do is they just need to start. Yes, the NRA is a sinking ship at the moment. We don't need to steer them in the right direction. We need to fix the holes first. So let's work on that and don't necessarily just write the NRA off. Consider actually doing some work with them or talking to them and making sure that it's known why you're displeased. By necessarily leaving your memberships and leaving everything that you could potentially do to help fix the boat, when you do that, it really does not help anything. It's just the thing to remember is it can't just be one person's voice that's being upset, or it can't just be 100. It's got to be a majority effort there. So it's something that I hope people consider. Hey, let's actually try fixing the holes in the boat instead of just allowing them to sink and fail. Because the more voices we can have that are helping with our fight to keep our gun rights, the better off we are.
Right. That's kind of, I don't know if you saw what I said over in the chat earlier, but I think a lot of people just pay their dues to the NRA and think that all they got to do is sit back and let the NRA fight for their rights and everything else, and all they got to do is sit and watch. But I think in this day and age, we all have to be in the fight. I mean, you not only have got to get the big organization to help keep everybody cohesive and focused, but we all have to also go to our 2A rallies and stuff like that and write our congressman. And, if those 5 million members did more than just pay dues, if they all wrote their congressman, if they all went to 2A rallies, just think about how great that would be.
Yeah, and that's the thing is what I mentioned earlier is, I hate to say it, a lot of us in this community are lazy, and I 100% admit to it. I tend to be a lazy bastard a lot of the times. But a big thing is if you have 5 million people and all of them contact their congressman, it doesn't take very long for you to write an email or for you to sit down and actually write a handwritten letter. It doesn't take long, and it doesn't take much effort to do that. So start exerting a little bit of effort on there. Maybe turn on a camera, or if you have the opportunity, jump in one of the live chats like this. Get your voice out there one way or another, because just sitting back and letting Big Brother fight for you isn't going to do anything. At the end of the day, what happens when Big Brother is no longer around? You start running into where, oh, I can't defend myself, or I can't say what I need to because Big Brother's done all the work for me and now he's not here. What do I do?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and Gary, your point goes back to my point about not as many people being angry as what it seems they may be, because if they're not in lockstep with the NRA when it comes to the whole bump stock thing and the other stuff the NRA has been pulling, they don't even know what's happening because they just pay their money and let the NRA do whatever the NRA is going to do.
And unfortunately, I think that's the majority of the time.
And that's a big thing is it comes down to, it's not just necessarily about paying attention and voicing your opinion and stuff like that. Do a little bit of research outside of the headlines, because that's a big thing is a lot of us get worked up over the headlines, but then in order to counteract these headlines or to actually go and find the actual truthful information or the whole story, a lot of us don't want to jump out there and do the extra research. We have this wonderful thing that's made life so much easier called the internet. Most of us sit on here and we watch YouTube videos, and that's great. I appreciate everybody watching all of the YouTubers' content, but also go out and do research outside of YouTube, outside of Facebook, outside of CNN, outside of Fox News. Go and do the actual research on it and have an actual valid argument. If you just go on into a long rambling rant when you send a letter or send an email, people get through maybe the first five sentences before they delete it. Make sure you actually know what you're talking about, have an argument for it, and don't get upset about it. Like, that's a big thing is with this bump stock stuff. A lot of people don't understand that the bump stocks really didn't change too much. You were able to do bump fire without having a bump fire stock, but because people didn't know what these were actually meant for, what they were designed for, what they actually do, it came down to people were okay with banning them because they didn't do a research and didn't know what they were actually talking about with it.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, look at Military Arms Channel. Tim is an expert on bump firing, and he's not even using a bump fire stock. He can bump fire anything. He's bump firing an SKS, for crying out loud. I couldn't do that if I tried.
Well, and that's a big thing is it's not only like, and that's something where it does go when you make a video. Tim is a very intelligent guy all around. So when he's actually talking about something, pay attention, because he's probably done more research than you could imagine to make sure that what he's saying is accurate. And that's the big thing is there's a lot of us that hop on here and we know a little bit and we do research, but we don't necessarily go through and do a detailed research on it, have information and facts and sources where we can send people to learn more information. And that's one thing I give credit to Tim. And Yankee's even good at that. Yankee goes on his rambling, real pissed off rants, and that's Yankee style, and that's great. But Yankee also does a good job of playing devil's advocate and playing from both sides, not just one. So maybe one thing that I would suggest to people is don't only look at it from the gun side, but actually research the anti-gun side, see where they're getting their information, their rhetoric from. That way you can have an intelligent argument and counter arguments what they have to say.
Yeah, I agree to a point on Yankee, because where he gets me irritated is with his live streams, because then he'll go full liberal at times on those. But his he does a good job with his produced content, which sadly he's not doing a lot right now because of his internet situation. His internet's right now is almost as bad as mine at times.
Yeah, and like Yankee's a guy that I would actually generally be interested to sit down and have a conversation with, because on a lot of stuff he does tend to lean towards the left side. And for me, I tend to lean towards the right. I think we're both kind of in the middle, but we have differing opinions. Like one thing that him and I differ opinion on a lot is the police force and what they're needed for. But again, that's not a bad thing. And that's something that people don't, on both sides, don't always like to sit down and talk about or agree about, is there's a point where maybe having a conversation without the emotions in it is a good idea. Sit down and have an actual conversation. Now, granted, a lot of people will say the anti-gun side doesn't have any logical arguments or anything. And most of the time, it's not based on logic. It's based on emotion. But at the same time, look at it from the pro-gun side. A lot of it's based on emotion, not necessarily just from the logical side. And that's where you got to start looking at it from both ways. Take the emotion out from both sides, sit down and have a logical conversation, and maybe someone will see something get done. Or maybe somebody will actually understand why we want to keep our guns. But when you start getting the emotional side and you start manipulating people, not manipulating, but alienating people by the way you're saying stuff to them or talking down to them, it actually does worse for your argument than it would do good.
Yeah, a perfect example of what you were just talking about is, I don't know if you've watched them or not, is Steven Crowder when he does his "I'm this, change my mind" videos. He got two girls who were, Amber sat down and talked to him, go and when he followed up with them, now want to go and buy a firearm for themselves. So
yeah, and that's a great example.
And you can actually change people's minds if they're open to it, and you can get them to not be emotional about it and actually look at the facts and logic.
Yeah, like one big thing that happened is so on my fiance's side of the family, she's got a aunt who is a lesbian, and her partner were going through and they were supporting Dick's because, oh, they're not going to sell these scary AR-15 rifles. So we all need to go out and buy something from Dick's. Even if it's just one time, we need to go out and buy something to them. And I looked at it from their side. I'm like, okay, they're trying to support a company that they feel is doing what they think should be done. So I respect that front. But the way that I was able to actually get them to sit down and think about it is, okay, look at Dick's numbers. They've been a failing company already. They are an outdoor store. Most outdoors people have something to do with firearms. So they're alienating their main customer base. And the way that I explained it to them is, okay, you guys are going to go, I'll go out on this day and purchase something from them. But in the long term, what does that do for their business? It does absolutely nothing. It's not a sustainable way of running a business. And I used logic and was able to show them that, hey, just because you guys go out and purchase something one time does not mean that it's going to make up for that whole firearms market that they have now pissed off that people aren't going to buy. So using logic can sometimes make people realize that, hey, what we're trying to do actually isn't going to do a whole hell of a lot. And it comes down to the same thing when you're having an argument with the anti-gunners, telling them that, hey, or when they're saying that if we got rid of guns, violent crime would drop. When you can actually show them statistics saying, hey, everywhere that's banned guns, the violent crime rate is actually skyrocketed, that tends to work better than just saying, well, that's not going to work. You gave them some information so that they can go research.
Yeah, not only that, but in the areas where gun ownership has gone up, crime has gone down. You have two correlating pieces of statistic which completely blows their argument on guns cause crime right out of the water. More gun ownership, less crime. Less gun ownership, more crime. You can't. There's set in stone, concrete evidence of both things, and they will still argue that that's not the case.
Well, it's just like, so one thing that's been proposed lately is having to, I think it was background checks for ammunition. That's been tried before. On a federal scale, it's been tried before. Or having to have a license to purchase ammunition or something. That's been tried before. It was literally written out of law because it was proven that it was useless. Just like waiting periods on firearms. And the state of Wisconsin's a great example. Up until 2015, we had a 48-hour waiting period on handguns and no waiting period on long guns. Well, what they figured out, and the reason that we no longer have waiting periods, is because that waiting period did absolutely nothing. It did nothing to lower the crime rate. And when you're actually able to show people that, hey, this is what your cause, you're saying that if we do this, it's going to stop this. When you can show them the actual information and show them facts and show them statistics, that's when you start having a better argument towards them.
Yeah, and your point about the whole ammunition licensing and everything, I think it was Too Hottie a couple weeks ago was talking about how in Seattle they had tried to put a tax on ammunition, so everybody just went outside of Seattle and bought their ammunition that way. So Seattle, I believe he said, repealed it because they weren't anyhow, and it wasn't stopping ammunition sales like they hoped it would. Yeah,
that's just like it's always funny to me when people propose this stuff and they don't actually go through and research it. Like, oh, the AR-15's used in all these shootings and all these crimes, when realistically, handguns are used more often than not. But the reason they demonize the AR-15 is because it looks scary. Or the other thing is I don't know if people remember, but a few years back, I can't exactly remember which one, the guy used a shotgun. It had about 5 minutes of airtime on every news network, but other than that, it wasn't done because they realized, hey, we can't go after a shotgun because that's as American as apple pie. Or when a revolver is used in a shooting that is involved with a handgun, they realize, hey, we can't go after that. Or in 1911 because that's American. We literally have museums that are run by the federal government for Browning and people who design these revolvers and stuff like that. It's like if you bring up these facts like, hey, you guys are completely out there because this is actually the least amount of thing, that least used item, then people have to go through and rethink about that. And then like the magazine capacities, it's like, okay, so essentially what you're telling me is by limiting my magazine capacity, you're telling me I have to go out and buy more magazines. Okay. I mean, and that's the thing that people don't realize is, hey, you can tell me on my M&P 40 that I can only have 10 rounds in there. That just means I'm going to go out and buy 10 more magazines.
Right. And to your point about the museums, one of the largest museums and probably one of the most famous museums in the country, if not the world, is the Smithsonian. And their World War II exhibit has guns from all over the place, and including the 1911, like what you were saying. But yeah, let's ban all these things. It makes no sense.
Yeah, and it comes down to is a lot of people don't want to base their arguments around fact. They want to base it around emotion. And granted, everybody's got emotions. I get angry. I get sad. I get upset. I get happy. I get horny. I get whatever emotions or feelings you can think of, just like every other human being does. However, when you start using emotion, that's when you start losing any topic. And sure, some fiery emotion can be good for about the first 2 minutes of an argument. But other than that, you start getting people that zone out when that's all you're based off of. Like, I hate to use this example, but after this Parkland shooting, me and my sister are no longer friends on Facebook. The reason being is my sister is not a gun person. She's more towards the liberal anti-gun side. And I love my sister to death. She's a very intelligent young woman. And her husband is a very amazing man. She is 23. Her husband is 26. She's never been in a situation where she's had to use a gun or anything along those lines. And my sister has a degree in psychology. I brought up the fact that everybody is basing this argument on an inanimate object, but not looking at the psychological aspect of it. And the first thing she did was assume that that was a personal attack on her. And she could not take the emotion out of it and understand that I'm not attacking you. I'm attacking everybody else. You are actually somebody who's intelligent and bases it off of not only the gun, but the psychological aspect. But she could not get rid of the emotion out of it. And it turned into where her and I just had to cut ways on Facebook and keep stuff to where it's separate. So it's one of those things where that's a good example of the emotion was too high. Nothing got accomplished by that conversation other than the fact that my sister and I didn't talk for a month.
It's like the old expression, what are two things you don't talk about at a family dinner? Politics and religion. And I want to mention, too, Hottie just brought it up, that Seattle still has their tax on ammunition. I couldn't remember if it was or not, so thanks for the clarification on that, too, Hottie.
See, that's just...
I couldn't remember if you said it had been repealed or proposed it or what the case was, if that was even the case. So, yeah, put up that clarification for us all.
That just reminds me of, like, alcohol as an example. Places that you can't buy alcohol on Sundays. Well, why wouldn't I just drive over to the next city over? If I'm right on a border state, why wouldn't I just hop over there and buy it? It's just like Wisconsin when they put a higher tax than what Illinois had on it. Everybody I knew was hopping the border to go buy cigarettes because they were cheaper in Illinois. It's like the taxes, by raising them, doesn't do anything. It just alienates people. Now, if they did a federal tax on ammunition and a higher federal tax on firearms, then you would be alienating the entire group, because essentially what you're doing at that point is making it so the poorer people can't have guns or ammunition. Only the people that are in a wealthier income source are able to do that. And that's something that I view as completely wrong, but it's something where these certain cities or certain states that are putting bans or putting taxes on this, I'll just go somewhere else and buy it. I got a car, I got a license, I got money for gas. I'll drive the extra 10 miles to go get something. It accomplishes nothing.
Yeah, it's just like the dry counties that have alcohol manufacturing centers. Why in the world would you make where you can't drink what is made in your own county or at least not buy it there when somebody else can just drive to the next county over and get it anyway?
Yeah, that's just
doesn't
like,
make any sense, these laws.
You know, one argument that never gets brought up on the left or the anti-gun side, I don't want to say left because not everybody on the left is anti-gun, but on the anti-gun side is you never see them say, well, where these firearm manufacturers are in the United States are more dangerous than anywhere else in the world, because that doesn't tend to be the case. So it's always funny to me that they've learned they can't use that argument because it's not true. It's like, okay, so why are you still using these other arguments that aren't based around fact? For example, Illinois. I can be in Illinois within an hour from my house. They have some of the strictest gun laws there, yet they have one of the highest gun crime rates out of anywhere. But they don't want to listen to the logic on that one.
To your point about them not wanting to vilify the areas where guns are, it's because, or manufactured rather, it's because a lot of the gun manufacturing centers are in the liberal states, which they claim are some of the best places to live. So that would defeat their own purpose if they were to do that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like there's certain stuff like I hate when I don't know if it's ever been like this, but you don't see any firearms commercials on TV. You see them on YouTube and other media outsources, but you don't see them on TV. And that's something that's always interesting to me, is it's like, what makes it so different between selling alcohol on the TV as opposed to selling a gun?
That depends on what channel you're watching. If you watch the outdoor channel, what's the other one? Sportsman, and then there's another one that has a lot of hunting stuff. There's a lot of those type of channels that actually do have gun manufacturer ads on them. And then there was another channel I was watching. I don't remember what it was the other day. It's one of the ones that shows the old reruns of TV shows, and that they had a Smith & Wesson commercial on. So there are channels that show them. They're just few and far between.
Yeah, and that's always something that's really funny to me is people just, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of the stupid bands that we have that just don't make any sense. And a lot of the stuff that goes on, it's not based on logic. It's based on emotion. And that's where I really have a hard time with people is I don't care if you're pro-gun or anti-gun. If you're basing everything on logic, I don't even necessarily want to have a conversation with you most of the time because it's not going to go anywhere. That's just like if I work for a Amazon facility that is a very mixed culture. We have every race, every religion, every political background, and everything like that. Now, it tends to be more in the part of Wisconsin that that facility is in. It tends to be more of the liberal side. So I don't talk to anybody about me doing YouTube or Instagram based around firearms. I talk to some people I know that are into guns there, but it comes down to one of those things. It's like, why should people be afraid of voicing that they are pro-gun in most of these facilities? And mind you, I work for Amazon, and Amazon's proven to be more of a liberal company that is anti-gun. But they don't necessarily frown upon people that are pro-gun. But everybody else, your managers and things like that, that's something that is a concern for a lot of pro-gun people is they're afraid to even mention that they're pro-gun in this world. But then if there's somebody that's talking anti-gun or talking against something that is one of those hot button topics that maybe most people on the left don't agree with, then it's completely okay, which I find to be ridiculous.
Yeah, that brings up something I've been meaning to ask you. If you don't want to answer it, that's fine. Are you working 2 jobs, or are you working for security for Amazon through your contracted company that you work for? That's just something, because you always are bringing up working for both. I was just wondering if you're like working 2 jobs, or if you're the security contracting job is what leads you to work at Amazon.
So essentially, I actually work a total of 4 jobs. I work for Amazon as technically my full-time job. I have recently stepped back more so from the security contractor because I've joined our rescue and recapture team. So I am more of an on-call basis. Essentially what happens is when I started with Amazon, I made an agreement with them. I have a smartwatch that I wear and it's connected to the network there. If I get a call from the security contractor with our code that there's an emergency, I'm out the door and I leave and I'm going to do my other job. And they completely understand that. The only requirement is that I have enough hours to cover the remainder of my shift for the first day. But I have an agreement with them that I got when I was hired. Then I also do by myself, contracted through a buddy's garden center. I am my job there is really weird. I am essentially a manager that deals with security. I do all the background checks for the employees. And then I also kind of keep people in line because we've had a run-in with a lot of shit people working for that company. And then on top of that, I still do, previously I owned a automotive shop that I did work on exotic cars. I still have some contract customers that I do work for them. So I actually essentially work 4 jobs. But the 2 that I mainly deal with are as a security contractor and as an employee of Amazon.
How do you find time to jump in these chats every week?
Well, so right now I'm actually off on a workman's comp injury. I tore part of my trapezius muscle that runs from your neck all the way through your shoulder. Then I also tore part of my rotator cuff. I was set to go back to work last Friday. I returned to work for 8 hours and I had to go to our AmCare facility, which is Amazon's on-site medical team. And they put me back off on leave of absence because my shoulder is still not healed after almost 7 months of being off. So there's some issues going on with that. But as of lately, I've had more time with that. And then it's starting to get to be the busier time for the garden center. So I will be having to do more work for them. But I'm glad because a lot of my work I can do from home. And a lot of my work for the automotive customers, they don't actually even have to come to me. They end up shipping their vehicle to me, and I do a lot of the work on those customers. Now that it's getting to be the warmer time, I have less work to do with that. So it's kind of a seasonal thing where the garden center's off during the winter, and during the winter, the auto repairs for these exotic cars are coming in for me to do. And then during the springtime and summertime, garden center's kicking back up, but most of my customers for the automotive side have their vehicles. So I've kind of gotten lucky to where I'm able to do that. And the reason I do that is I'm 26 years old. My goal is to be able to retire at 50. And the way that they're saying is if people aren't smart and putting a bunch of money away the way that I am in preparing for retirement, my generation may not retire until we're in our 80s. And I don't want to be that person. I don't want to work till the day I die. I want to be able to enjoy my retirement someday.
Alrighty then. So the garden center you're working at doesn't do year-round sales, only spring and summer. So they're not doing like greenhouse stuff in the winter, because a lot of the garden centers around here, they have the greenhouses and they'll sell fresh grown vegetables and stuff. And then around Christmas, they'll have like poinsettias and stuff like that people use. So the one you work at doesn't do that kind of stuff. They just do the gardening stuff during the spring and summer then.
Yeah, they do a lot more of the gardening type stuff for summer and spring, obviously. And then they bring in Christmas trees, so they do that during the winter, but that is they go down to very few hours and only the owners technically are working at that point. Everybody else is off. So they keep it very limited. And the way that they have it set up, they're very intelligent the way they do it. And they have great employees now. They had some issues before they asked me to start working for them. But they've gone through and everything. The garden center, this is probably going to be my last year working for them, but the owners are getting ready to sit down and sell it. And there's nothing wrong with that. The people who started it, Mike and Patty, they've been doing this for almost 40 years now. So it works out really well. And the way that they've got it set, they make enough to where they can keep the doors open, keep people employed, and they can retire comfortably. So I don't know their exact business plan, but whatever they do, it's worked out. And they had talked about doing some of the fresh vegetables during the winter, but I don't think that they wanted to even risk that, because around here, the big problem we have is because the temperature fluctuates so much and we get so much damn cold that even with the insulated and heated pole barns and greenhouses and everything like that, you still run a huge risk of losing stuff. Then during the summer and spring, they also do some landscaping stuff, which sometimes doesn't even end up finishing up till fall. So, and then they also do around Halloween, they have a pumpkin patch that they also run as well.
Okay, but yeah, because you're up in Wisconsin, so I can see how you might have the issues even if you have the greenhouse and that, especially if you get a lot of snow in the area, and that might also block the sun from even getting through the glass of the greenhouse and whatnot. So yeah, I can see the issue there with that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and it's April 28th right now, and this week was the first week that we had every day except for one that was above 40 degrees. There was still snow on the ground as of last week, and last week we were still getting actual snow. So it's one of those things, because we live in such an Arctic and unpredictable climate. It's you have to weigh the risk versus the benefit of doing certain stuff like that when you own a business like that. And a lot of these businesses are very intelligent, like the garden center used to, but last year they didn't. They used to do plowing for different businesses, which is a way of being able to make it up. So you kind of have to shape your business around your territory, is the best way of putting it, which is something that the garden centers had to deal with and figure out, but they've somehow mastered it.
All right, since this basically has turned into an interview of you now, anything else you want to throw in that you're involved with?
Sounds like last night all over again.
Yeah. So one question that I did get sent to me from last night's chat that I had, or what was it, Thursday night's chat that I had, was what do I actually do for Amazon? And you kind of alluded to it a little bit as well. I'm actually, for Amazon, I'm just a fulfillment center employee. So essentially, the department I work in sends out single items in the package. So essentially, I get totes brought down to me. I grab each item out of there, scan it, stick it into a box, send it out, and it goes to you. Now, the one thing I will say about that is even if you guys order something from Amazon, I will never see your name or your address on that package. So if you order something dirty, I'm not going to know that it's going to you, because Amazon's got it really set up and secure where there's only one person on an entire line for packaging that actually sees the addresses, because we do deal with a lot of different people. We deal with a lot of different clients, and they are very strict on privacy, because it's one of those things. Amazon sells everything, and I literally pack everything you can imagine. So they want people's privacy to be a number one thing. So if anybody's ever been curious about how secure your information is when it goes through Amazon, let's put it this way. There's one employee on an entire line that deals with at least 1 million packages a night, that they're the only ones that sees anybody's name or address.
Yeah, basically it's an assembly line process. One person puts in a layer of the shipping material, the other person puts the actual product in, the next person puts the top layer, somebody else tapes up, and then somebody slaps the address label on.
Nope. So essentially what happens is the totes with the products can be up to 20 pounds. Those come down the line. We each grab a tote, and I pull one item out. So for example, say it was, let me turn on my camera. Say it was, actually, this is a better example because this came from Amazon. So say that you took this site. I would pull it out of the package. I would build my box, stick it into a box, put the packaging material in it, put a tape up the top of it, and put a label on the side, which is called a SPOO, and it's a barcode, and that barcode translates specifically with this product that's going to one specific person. That goes down the conveyor line, that SPOO gets read, and then the label with the name gets pushed onto the box, and then straight down it does. It's 100% automated when it comes to that. So we don't actually have a process like that. We have to, right now, the minimum in my department is you have to pack 90 items an hour.
$90 an hour. That's a lot of items.
Oh, that's slow. I pack 150 an hour.
That's still a lot of stuff. I mean, that's over an item a minute. I mean,
yeah. I think it boils down to is you spend less than 7 seconds with one package.
That sounds about right.
But I will tell you this: if you have not had the opportunity to work for a company like Amazon or something like that, where you work for such a large company that there is such a diverse group of people to work with, I would highly recommend it. Even if you just pick it up as a part-time job, I would highly recommend it, because it's made me more aware of a lot of topics that, or a lot of people's views on things that I necessarily wouldn't have necessarily seen had I not worked with these types of people. So I work with, like I said, with people from every walk of life, anti-gun, pro-gun, people that are criminals, people that like the police, people that hate the police. And it gives you an opportunity to see and have some interesting conversations. The lady that trained me first, she's an African-American woman. I'm not going to share her name because I do value her privacy. She is in her 50s. She grew up in Milwaukee, which is the large city here in Wisconsin. And she grew up being more of the anti-police side and anti-gun. And even to this day, she still has some of those sentiments. But her and I are able to sit down and have conversations and see each other's side. And she actually wants me to take her to a gun range, because I sat down and I had a conversation with her about why she was anti-gun and why she didn't like guns and things like that. And I was able to sit down and have that conversation with her and find out more information about her. And she was so appreciative of that. This woman, I swear to God, was almost bawling in tears when I started explaining it to her that, hey, I understand. When you grew up, you saw a lot of the gang violence. You saw people shooting and killing themselves in the street. I want to be able to protect myself, my family, and everyone around along those lines from ever having to experience something like that. If I'm able to prevent it, I will step in and do so. And she was in tears because she had in her 50 years of life, never heard somebody put it that way. She's always heard that, well, I'm just going to use it to defend myself. But when someone was actually able to sit down and say, I would defend you, even though you don't agree with me on stuff, you don't necessarily think I should be carrying a gun, I would defend you. And she had never heard that before. And that's something where it really does pull on people's emotional strings. And that's the type of emotions that you want to pull on, is make them realize that, hey, just because I carry a gun doesn't mean that I want to hurt you. If somebody came into this building right now, and I explained this to her, I'm like, if somebody came into this building in Amazon right now, even though I'm not allowed to carry my gun and work, I have it in my car, which is completely legal here in the state of Wisconsin. I would fight my way out to get that gun, and I would run back in here to save your life, to save others' lives. And that's something where you got to learn that sometimes pulling on somebody's emotional strings like that makes them get it, makes them understand that. And up until I worked in this type of environment, I don't think I ever truly understood how much of an impact that can have on somebody's viewpoint.
Yeah, definitely. We had a similar situation when I worked at Greyhound, and we had drivers that would come into the terminal from places like Cleveland and Washington. There was a mixed bag, shall we say, of opinion and whatnot. There was one driver that worked out of the Pittsburgh terminal, which is where I worked. His nickname was Wild Bill because he was a crazy guy. And the two of us, we would have a gun conversation every time we saw each other. So, I mean, and there was another driver who would always give us a weird look. One day we both looked at him and was like, why do you keep giving us this look? And this guy was a driver out of Washington. And he's like, I don't like guns. We were like, why? He's like, well, because of gangs. I was like, do we look like we belong to a gang? But his whole thing was he didn't like firearms because he related firearms to being gangs and whatnot.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. Is like one thing that I'm a firm believer in is if you're a felon, I don't think you should automatically lose all of your rights, and that includes your right to own a firearm. Now, if you are convicted of a violent crime, rape, murder, spousal abuse, anything along those lines, any violent crime, then fuck yeah, you should lose your license. And excuse my language, that one slipped. But I think you should lose your rights if you commit a violent crime. But if you got caught with an ounce of weed or something like that, I don't think you should lose your rights permanently. I think you should have to go through a process to show that you're of better moral character once you get out. But just because you committed a felony, I don't think you should lose your right to self-defense or your right to say, hey, I don't think that this person should be in office. So for me, that's one opinion that I've had mixed emotions on, but it's of the same thing. And I had a conversation with the guy. He is a felon and he committed a violent felony. He knows that I'm a gun guy. He knows that I own guns, and this was at a previous job. His name was Pedro, and he's a really nice, really genuine guy. He made a mistake when he was younger. He was 16 years old. He was into gang violence and everything, or into gangs, and he ended up beating the hell out of somebody that he got charged with attempted murder. And it was a felony. He flat out said, he's like, you know, back in the gang days, we had guns and stuff like that. I just don't think anybody should have them. But what changed my mind is when I was robbed at home. He's like, I've changed my life around, and I was robbed at home, and somebody threatened me with a gun. He's like, now I understand why everybody wants to have a gun in their home to protect and defend themselves. And that was something where it was really nice to be able to hear him say that. It's like, yeah, I get that. I told him, I'm like, unfortunately, my thought process is you committed a violent crime, so I don't think you should have access to a firearm. And he completely understood that. But he also respected the fact that I told him, I'm like, just because people commit a felony or commit a crime doesn't mean that they should lose their right to self-defense. So I told him, I'm like, if you wouldn't have committed a violent crime and told me that you had a felony for weed or something like that, I would have fought for your rights to get it back. But I told him, I'm like, this is my thought process. And a lot of people, even on the pro-gun side, don't agree with me on that. And that's something that people nowadays got to do, is they got to stop being scared of voicing their opinions. You're not always going to have the most popular opinion in the room, but make sure you're heard.
look at earlier in the chat. We disagreed over what we think is happening with the NRA and if people are angry with them about. But we're not mad at each other.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is having a good debate is the best thing to have.
And to your point just now about felons getting firearms, I agree with you to an extent, but I would say that somebody who had committed an assault or something along those lines, I wouldn't include in the ban thing. And the way I would do it is when you're released from prison, you get your right to a long gun back, because if you look at the statistics, long guns are very rarely used in the commission of a crime. And if you want to get your rights to have a handgun back, you got to wait 5 years and prove that you've kept your nose clean. And at the end of that, you can petition to have your handgun rights restored to you. Now, if you committed a murder or you raped somebody, kiss your firearm rights goodbye. I don't care.
Yeah, see, and so that's something where it kind of comes from me. So I grew up, my dad walked out when I was younger, and I grew up with my grandfather being that father figure. My grandfather was technically a felon. He has an honorable and a dishonorable charge from the military. Essentially, my grandpa got caught making a fake pass to get off base, and he got charged with it, and that's a felony. It was, I forget what it was. It was an attempt to deceive the United States government or something that he got charged with. Well, my grandpa, for the longest time, couldn't own guns because he was a felon. He went to court, and there is a process for people to go to court now to get their rights back, essentially. He went to court and got what's called a relief of disability. And he ended up proving that he was of good moral character, got his rights back and everything along those lines. Something like that, I think, is a great idea. And unfortunately, people don't want to take that into account. And I think that, yeah, something like what you said, where you get your right to a long gun back, would be a good idea. Not necessarily give them everything back, but give them the right to get a long gun back. But then you run into the aspect of, how do you set that up? When do they tell you, when you run a NICS background check system, that this person can only own a specific type of long gun? Or how would we work that out?
Well, long gun's a long gun. It'll be either a rifle or a shotgun. You just have it in, I guess, like an endorsement or something along those lines. It comes up qualified for long gun, not handgun. That'll be how I would do it. And then once they go through and they petition, and if their handgun rights return to them, then that just gets erased completely from the record, and it just goes back to being okay.
Yeah, and I think the way that I would potentially look at it is, when you are going through a certain circumstance, like right now, if you go through to get the relief of disability, you have to be able to have people attest or kind of testify for you and say that you're of good moral character. If we're talking about getting somebody's rights back because they did commit a felony, that would be one time where I would be okay with having to have somebody who, one or two people come in and say, yes, I know this person, I see them often, I deal with them often, I think they are of good moral character. That's something that I would be okay with adding in a little bit of a restriction there.
Right, and at the same time, also, you can't commit any crimes or anything along those lines. You know, like no drunken disorderlies or anything along those lines. Prove that you've earned the right to get your right back, and that you actually have cleaned up your act and whatnot.
Uh-oh, looks like Shall Not Be Infringed Boy is here.
No. It's Mr. Shall Not Be Infringed to you, Mr. Snowy North.
How you doing, Night Strike?
I'm good, and I disagree with what you said. I mean, if they have shown that they are of good moral character and they have been good for the proper amount of time to which they can get their record expunged, then I accept no infringements on them. They should be able to own whatever they want. Period. Because the Constitution doesn't say, some infringements are okay. It says shall not be infringed. Translation.
That's what I was.
Don't mess with it.
Yeah, but my point is that once they've proven that they can be trusted back in society, then yeah, they're right. They get all their rights back. I'm not saying that they would have a limitation after they've proven themselves. It's after they've proven themselves, they get that taken off of their background check, and they're allowed to have whatever they want. When they first get out, they have access to a long gun.
Yeah, because I guess my argument there would be is with the current system, where in our Constitution does it say that if you commit a felony now that you lose your rights? That's my biggest thing is we have that limitation on there already, even though nowhere is it actually stated in the Constitution that that should be the case. Which at that point, right. I would agree with the argument of the fact that, okay, because it doesn't say that in the Constitution, it's a unalienable right, as you said, Night Strike, and it shall not be infringed. So even if somebody commits a felony at that point, their right shouldn't be infringed on in the first place.
Well, back in the old,
that doesn't mean they shouldn't be thrown in jail. Of course, I agree with you there. If they do something wrong, if they do something wrong, throw their ass back in the clink. I don't care.
Before the 20th century, when you got out of prison, they hand you your gun back. A lot of guys went into prison when they surrendered themselves to get put in prison wearing a firearm on their hip. And if that was the case, it was the responsibility of the prison to keep that firearm in working condition. They had to keep it clean. They had to make sure it was in working, functional condition. And when you got out, you got that back along with whatever other belonging you had on you at the time.
Yeah, there's a law in Arizona. While they haven't taken it, they haven't gotten rid of the law. They don't enforce it anymore because other law, federal law, basically trumps that, and they don't want to have to argue. But the law was that if you went to jail or prison, that after you were released, they were supposed to release you with they were supposed to give you your horse back, your gun, and 2 canteens full of water. But they don't enforce that anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of that.
Running from a prison on a horse in today's day.
Believe it or not, some people still ride horses. I mean, I was going down the road, but I'm not kidding. I was driving down the road.
It would be funny to be driving down the prison and see somebody getting released and riding off on their horse with a 6-gun on their side. I mean, it's like to see.
There were 2 people riding a horse on the side of the road as I was driving down the highway yesterday. So people still do ride horses. Not as much as they used to, though.
Yeah, but they're not using them as their primary mode of transportation, which is what the law in Arizona would require. They would be given the horse because that's how they would get back to town.
Right, but still, it's a law that they never got rid of.
Yeah, there's some weird laws on the books that have never been gotten rid of whatsoever, to be honest with you. But at the same time, it's
I believe I brought up the one about the duck in Pittsburgh on Sundays where you can't walk your duck downtown because it disrupts church services.
Like one that I would love to, something that I would love to see is not all laws, but some laws, I would love to see it just go back to the olden ways. Like when it comes to the Second Amendment, I would love to see it go back to the olden ways of that. Because like we were talking about arguments to have with people, and one big thing that I did as of recently that really pissed some people off on Facebook is my old boss, his wife, and I are friends on Facebook, and she posted something about anti-gun stuff, or it was pro-gun, and then everybody tried bringing in their anti-gun stuff because she tends to have the liberal side of people as friends, which is her choice, and that's fine. But one of them said was, well, the Second Amendment is outdated and it's meant for older firearms. And my biggest argument that I had there is, okay, social media, cell phones, computers, and what have you were not designed for the First Amendment. Back when that was written, the police didn't have access to be able to search somebody's computer, which technically you could consider to be protected under the Fifth Amendment because their computer is their private property, and anything that's private property can be used to incriminate themselves. So should we go back to where all these people that are child molesters and have gotten charged with kiddie porn get all those cases thrown out because they didn't have access to computers when this was written? No. And then I just kept going on and on about how all of this, every amendment to the Constitution can go back and say, well, hey, this wasn't used back then, so should we allow them to not have to use that?
I'll take it one step further on that one. going to the whole issue of the police and everything, when the Constitution was written, there were no organized police organizations in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing that I always bring up is, okay, well, if you're going by that, should we not allow the police to use any of the technology that they have available to them? So when I go out or when somebody goes out and shoots somebody, or I get shot and killed, that they can't use bullets from somebody else's gun to match to the bullet that killed me. And like, I just went off on this explanation, and I went through almost every single amendment to the Constitution, and finally they all just, bam, they were done. No one could argue with me, because it's like, holy shit, I have to sit here and think about this. And how can I argue this when he brings up every single fact that each one of these amendments can be changed to where we don't have to use everything? I'm like, are you really going to sit there and say that every amendment should be either taken away or fixed to meet modern standards? Or are you just going to allow it be the law of the land like it was meant to be? It wasn't designed to only cover back in the 17 and 1800s. It was designed to cover this country forever.
You know, that's a concept that they can't comprehend, because they don't think that the founders were smart enough to realize that things were changing or would change. And of course, they don't understand the fact that they were developing repeating arms before the Constitution was even written. Before the American Revolution ever happened, there was a thing called the puckle gun.
Thank you.
The puckle gun. But Rich, yeah. I have to back up as far as laws. Did you know in the state of West Virginia, it is prohibited to whistle underwater?
Yeah, good luck with that one.
Yeah.
Unless you're wearing one of those scuba helmets that has the radio built into it and everything, yeah, that ain't happening anyhow.
It's also illegal to sleep on the train in West Virginia as well.
Yeah,
the weird law that I still see that's covered, it seems to be across all 50 states, and I don't know if this is a federal law, is you can't sell a gun or you can't sell a car on Sundays. How the hell does that make sense?
It's probably back from the 20s or 30s.
It might also be one of those ones that's because of church services and whatnot, and Sunday being the day of rest, and right in that somehow too. Because that's
the weird law with that, the weird thing with all those laws is the United States does not have a religion. There is no specific religion.
We don't have an organized religion, but did you know that Thomas Jefferson held a prayer meeting in the Capitol Rotunda every Sunday? And he would have different speakers from different denominations and religions come in and lead the prayer every Sunday afternoon for the congressmen when they were in session.
And I'm a Lutheran. I'm Christian. I'm a Lutheran. I go to church. I do everything I'm supposed to. But at the same time, I don't understand why certain laws were created around the Christian religion when we're not taking into the account of everybody else's religion. I mean, the military now, it just got added in. I believe it was the Sheik that originally protested for beards. Now there's somebody who practices the Norse religion, and he is able to wear a beard under the same stipulation that it can't be longer than 2 inches. But because he claimed that he was part of this religion, now they're starting to accept that. It's like, that's how it should be across the board.
The problem is, and this comes from the 20th century, when people read Jefferson's letter to the Dansbury Church, they took it out of context first. And the second thing is, the Constitution does not strictly state that the government cannot be involved in religion. They just cannot establish an organized national religion like what the Church of England. That is why we have that in the First Amendment. It's not that the government can't stay out of as far as that's concerned. They can have religious ceremonies. They can do this, that, and the other. They just can't promote a single religion or adopt a single religion for the entire country. This whole freedom of religion, or not freedom of religion, but the government can't be involved in religious activities is a complete and total fallacy that came about in the 20th century. You used to have prayer in every public school across the country.
So I got to be honest.
So it's not that you can't have that. There is no separation of church and state. That is false.
look at it from the founding fathers' perspective, though. I mean, would you want to break away from another country, but stay the same damn religion as them, the Church of England? No, you'd want to be a different religion entirely.
Yeah, that's
or you wouldn't want religion in the government in the first place. People can practice whatever religion, you don't care. You just don't want to be, in the Church of England anymore because, well, you just broke away from England.
There's a lot of things that didn't want to get involved with because they were trying to break away from England. But right. That's not overall what my point was. That was the fact that the Church of England was established by not the federal government, but the monarchy, because that was established by Henry VIII when he broke away.
Because Henry VIII couldn't have male children, we know.
Well, yeah.
And
so
do you know that
I'm Catholic, Rich. I know.
Whoever's sitting on the throne, whoever is the monarch in England at the time is who basically the Pope of the Church of England is.
I know, Rich. I'm Catholic. I understand this. I've done the history lesson.
Night Strike. We're not just remember. This isn't just for your benefit. I'm explaining things for everybody who may be watching.
I know.
But yeah, I mean that's what they were wanting to avoid with the way the First Amendment's written, because they didn't want the government being in charge of the church, but they didn't necessarily want to keep the church out of the government either.
Well, that's just like every time. I have a huge thing, and it pisses a lot of people off, and personally, I don't care, but I flat out tell people, if you are not from America or not currently living in America, I don't want to hear what you have to think about our gun rights or not. Because let's put it this way, every time that somebody from England, such as Piers Morgan or any of those jackasses have something to say, I flat out say, well, if we wanted to be like England or wanted to be like Europe, we wouldn't have had the whole breaking away from England happen, and we wouldn't have set up our own government and done all that crap.
Set up our own country and then proceeded to save England from being annihilated by Germany in 2 world wars.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if we wanted to be like you guys, we never would have left you. So it's one of those things. We're not European. We are a part of the Americas. We are part of North America, and then we have South America and Central America right below us. We're not English, we're not European, we're not any of that. We are a hodgepodge of every country out there, and we have members that have come from every country out there, but at the same time, they're not coming here because they want to be British anymore, or they want to be Australian anymore, or they want to be German. They're coming here because they want to be Americans. If we wanted to be like any other country, we would still be a part of that. Just like this whole California secede from the United States, go for it. You can go be Californians on your own, keep all your fucking hippies out there and all your people that are anti-gun. You can keep them. Just realize that that's never going to work out for you. Ask Texas, they're back.
Don't cross that border, because we're building a wall where that border is. So, keep you out.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, is it's like, if that's what you really want, fine. If you don't want to be Americans anymore, that's your right. But I guarantee you don't get enough people to sign that dotted line to say that they want out.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. I just want to go back and touch briefly again on the church and government thing. Do you know what saved? No, there's a reason why. Because we were talking about the Constitution. You know what saved the Constitutional Convention? Do you know what saved the Constitutional Convention? They had a 3-day prayer meeting at a local church in Philadelphia. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Prior to that, all they were doing was arguing, and after they had this 3-day prayer meeting, that's when they came back and they were able to get most of the work done, because at that point they stopped arguing and started actually conversing with each other.
Yeah, and it comes down to if you have something commonality, or even if you guys have, and I hate to say it, but I don't care specifically what religion anybody on the panel is or anybody in the chat is, but if you have the commonality of a belief in God or a commonality of a belief in something, then you guys could normally have at least something to start a conversation with. And sometimes you need to go and have a stress relief. I hate to say it, there's people on the pro-gun side that I hate talking to. I will talk to them, but sometimes it's halfway through. I got to mute myself, or I got to tell them, hey, I'll be back in a little bit, and I'll walk away and go smoke a cigarette and come back. It's one of those things. It's like, I don't care how people deal with it, but sometimes everybody just needs to take a step back and calm down. Do whatever you got to do to calm down. But eventually you can meet up and have that conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry, Snowy. You can go have your cigarette now.
Nah, I'm good. No, and that's the weird thing is, like, when I first got into the YouTube side of things, I started off on Instagram. And Instagram, I have to say, is a quicker way to get toxic comments than what YouTube is. And YouTube is a toxic platform, just like Instagram is. But there are certain people on here that I've had disagreements with and stuff like that. Like Night Strike, one thing you and I have had a disagreement on is the holster for the 1911 and the safeties and stuff like that. But we can sit here and have a civil conversation. Rick, you and I don't necessarily agree with everything on the NRA, but we can sit here and have a civil conversation. I have no problems with people having a different opinion or differing thoughts or a thought process or anything like that. But that's the nice thing is most people can at least swallow their pride in this community and sit down and say, hey, we can agree to disagree. We disagree, but this is where we have some commonality in it. And that's something that's...
I'm not swallowing anything, but I'll have a civil conversation with you.
And G in the chat puts gun channels is better than YouTube, and I agree with that 100%.
And you know what's better than YouTube? It's GunTube. GunTube.
I have an issue with your platform, sir.
Well, that's
every time I load up my gosh darn banner on there, I reposition it, and I will save it. And then the first time I go to my page, it'll look fine.
You got to control F5 a couple times. You got to refresh the page a couple times. It takes a little while.
Yeah,
the
what
problem
I'm saying
I have
is
with gun channels, and it's not necessarily a problem with gun channels itself. It's my internet. I cannot have Hangouts or YouTube and gun channels open at the same time, or my internet just lags to hell and back. Yeah, I would literally. So that's I can't do both at once. So I don't know if anybody else is watching on the gun channel side. We are on gun channels, but I can't do it. So that's why I'm not taking it going on in gun channels right now, because I literally can't.
I told you the soup cans and the string was a bad idea, but no, you had to go ahead and do it anyway.
No, that would be better than Frontier, which is what I have now.
Well,
hey guys, I'll be back in like 5 minutes. I got to talk to Megan about something.
Okay, have fun with your cigarette.
So, Mikey, have you eaten your life cereal today?
Don't call me Mikey.
Oh.
Or otherwise, I'm going to start calling you Richard, or I'm going to start calling you Dick, because you're being a dick.
Nuh-uh. I was just calling you your name.
Mikey is not my name.
Oh, you don't pronounce the E? I'm just messing with you.
That's okay, Dick. I understand, Dick.
When I got the tumbler from Jelsma, he had one of your business cards from Tulsa in there.
Yeah.
What your name was anyway, but still.
Just don't add the Y. We're good.
No, I was pronouncing the E. I wasn't putting a Y at the end.
No, you were totally putting a Y at the end. I heard it.
No, it was just the E. It was a long E.
There is no long E. There's all you.
Do you have the Y on your business card? No.
No, I don't.
So I was pronouncing the E.
Yeah, but when you said live cereal, that Mikey is with a Y.
I know that Mikey was with a Y. I didn't say you were with a Y.
Stop this right now. Stop.
Keeps it going, and you're telling me to stop.
You're in a circular argument right now. Stop.
This chat's finally getting.
See, they're taking my side. Stop.
See, now we can pronounce that sound with your name, Gary, because your name ends with a Y.
Gary ends with a Y. Mike does not.
No, but it ends with an E. I was pronouncing the E.
The E is pronounced regularly.
No, it's pronounced E, not regularly. See, no. Regularly is a whole word that E is in.
You are totally being a dick right now.
All right, guys, I'm back.
You want to referee, Snowy?
Why? What's going on? I have to referee Megan.
You missed it. You've been gone for 2 minutes, and you missed. All hell broke loose here.
No,
well, all hell may break loose with Amazon because Megan's home. She had to come home early because she got a concussion because of faulty equipment.
Oh, great.
Oh, that's always a good thing.
Yeah, that's always fun.
Yeah, and trust me, I'm on workman's comp leave with those fuckers right now, and it's not fun to deal with. All right, so what did I miss?
Richard's just being a dick.
I called him Mikey. I pronounced the E at the end.
Oh, I just call him Blue Dress. Or 202.
Very funny, guys. Very funny.
Or where's Midnight when you need him to start reading a story time?
He's probably still at work.
He's probably still making somebody's steak and doing Lord knows what with the soup. We've all seen the movie Fight Club. We know.
And yeah, John Brown, you're absolutely right. That is what happened. By the way, he made a comment out in the chat about how it was the commie lawyers in the 20th century that started the separation of church and state nonsense. And in part, they based that on Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptist Church.
Give me 2 minutes, I'll be back again.
Yeah, but Rich, I'm going to stop you right there because in the 1950s, before we didn't always have "In God We Trust" on our currency. Back in the 50s, because of the whole communism thing and the rise of communism in Europe and the whole Soviet Union and the Cold War, we put "In God We Trust" on our money because of it to separate us from the godless communists.
Yeah, but that was a brief anomaly when in the 20th century we had a Republican Congress and a Republican president. That is when that got done under Eisenhower.
So what you're saying is we need Mad Dog to run for president.
Couldn't hurt.
Okay.
Yeah, but other than that brief period, if you look at what was going on, particularly during the progressive era, they were slowly but surely writing religion out of government more and more and more and more and more as they went.
Yeah.
Why? You take away a nation's religion, you take away their morality, you can insert whatever you want. What was the first thing they did in China and Russia when the communist parties took over? They got rid of religion.
Well, Russia had a problem with that. Russia, they tried to get rid of religion with the Soviet Union tried to make everybody, what was it, atheist. Then they found out that didn't
was technically atheism.
Yeah, but unfortunately, they found out.
A lot of people followed the atheist view.
A lot of people did, but they also found out that a lot of people in secret were also still practicing their religion.
Oh, you get that in China. People are China does the same thing, but when you get a large part of the population that's cowed into following what the state says on religion, they can start inserting whatever they feel they want to as far as the morality of that country is at that point, which is why they are trying to do what they have been doing since early 20th century when the progressive movement, which was formerly the American Socialist Party, when they realized that didn't work, they changed to being progressive. When people started catching on to that, they changed to liberal. But that's what they've been doing the whole time from the 20th century until now to get to where the more you take religion out of people's lives, the more you can replace that with what you want.
What I was getting at, if you've actually looked at the history books, the Soviet Union was atheist. That was their official stance. But what they found out is trying to take religion away from people doesn't work, and people would still practice it in general to where they had to. They literally had to turn a blind eye to it and say, "We're atheists, but if you're going to practice religion, just don't tell us about it. We don't care." That was their policy, quite literally.
Yeah, and it's a generational thing. You're not going to completely erase religion in 1, 2, even 3 generations. It's a multi-generational thing. Which is why even today in China, where they still have the anti-religion policy in place, they still have people practicing in secret.
Yeah. So, anyways.
Night Strike, did you get your CCL yet?
No, I still haven't gotten into the mail yet.
Good Lord.
Well, that's South Carolina for you. Do everything by snail mail and do it as slow as possible, right?
They could have walked it to you by now.
No, I could have walked and gotten it from the State House and then walked back by now. But
you can't tell me there's that much of a demand that it takes that long to get everything printed up.
Well, apparently they've been known to go longer than 90 days.
Apparently he's not of good moral character.
I'm still able to own firearms, so there you go.
Here's like I said before, you can get your permit the same day you apply for it, and the most they can take is 45 days to get it to you.
Okay, so here's a question for everybody in the panel. Tell me that this doesn't sound weird to you. Someone gets hurt at work, head injury, possibility of a concussion. As an employer, would you allow that employee to drive themselves to the hospital if they're having a hard time seeing straight? Or would you make somebody take them for a ride or call an ambulance and have them take you?
Like ambulance.
My company
that's
let you
an
drive
ambulance
yourself
situation.
out.
I mean, they could, if something would have happened and she would have wrecked on the way home, they could have been held liable for not calling an ambulance and having her taken to the hospital.
Okay, so then here's another question. As a hospital, if you know somebody has a concussion that you just diagnosed, would you then let that person get in a car and drive themselves home?
No, why
that
would
depends on how. The issue there isn't that she had the concussion; it's the severity at that point. It depends on how the severity they would have diagnosed her with.
Well, because she's not seeing straight because she's got a headache. She's having a hard time seeing straight. Just all kinds of stuff like that.
So what you're saying is she's punch drunk at this point?
Yeah, essentially, she's punch drunk. And they not only did Amazon...
They should not have let her drive home for you to go pick her up.
Yeah, so not only did they force her to drive herself to the hospital, then the hospital allows her to drive home.
Here's an even better question. Are you listed as her emergency contact at Amazon?
Yes, I am, and they didn't
call
me.
She did not call you.
This is a question that I will never know. Mind you, we work the same shift in the same building, just in different departments. They didn't notify her when I had to go to the hospital, so she comes out on break and her car is missing. She couldn't find me. I didn't answer my phone because I'm sitting in the middle of getting a MRI on my shoulder. They didn't bother informing her, my emergency contact in the same building on the same fucking shift, that I had to go to the hospital and that I had to drive myself.
Time out here. Back up. You injured your shoulder, severely injured your shoulder, and they didn't call an ambulance to take you to the hospital with that injury either?
Nope, they made me drive myself.
I'm contacting a lawyer from you at this point, because this isn't just a random occurrence at this point. This is a trend.
Dad, I have something to mention here.
Yeah, it's one of those things where a lot of it's not making sense to me the way they're doing that.
But do you have to lose an arm or a limb for them to call an ambulance, or what?
God, I don't know. At this point, you know,
if you are injured and to the point where you cannot move your arm, where you shouldn't be driving a vehicle, they are obligated. They must call an ambulance. Call an ambulance, and something would have happened when he was driving himself to the hospital, or his fiance was driving herself to the hospital. Amazon could be held liable.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing, as it's
what their obligations are.
And mind you, we have on-site medical care, which is great. AmCare is great, and everybody in my facility is great. But they can only do so much. So yes, if we have to go to the hospital, like that's the thing, is I was having so much issue with my shoulder that I went down there because I was having a hard time with lifting my shoulder. Now, the big thing with that is at that point, yeah, you would normally send somebody to the hospital to get their shoulder checked out. Well, here's the thing. They put ice on it and then sent me back out on the floor and told me I had to go back to work. So I worked for a total of 3 minutes and told them this ain't working. I need to go to the hospital. Then it took an hour for me to actually get sent to the hospital after that.
Okay, here's a big difference, all right? Do you guys remember the old style shopping carts where they folded up and you had the basket on top of a rack that would fold, and the basket would fold up and down? I had one of those come down and crush my thumb when I was working at Giant Eagle Supermarket in Pittsburgh. As soon as the manager found out, he went outside and got one of the jitney drivers, which is like a independent taxi driver kind of thing, and had them drive me to the hospital because he did not want me going there on my own. Meanwhile, this was just for my thumb. When I worked at Greyhound, I got hit in the head with one of the bus bin luggage doors, and it busted me open. As soon as I went into the office and they saw the blood and everything, they called an ambulance right then and there and had me taken in an ambulance. That is exactly what Amazon should have done in your case and your fiance's case.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing, and that's why, like, granted, I'm not trying to talk shit about my employer, but it really frustrates me with that, because it's like we're both injured and now you guys have not sent either of us to the hospital. And this is a common thing with them, is you have to drive yourself to the hospital. Well, that makes no sense.
In your case, it would have been like my thumb. They could have had a coworker drive you. They didn't necessarily have to call an ambulance in your case because yours was a shoulder. Your mental faculties and such weren't debilitated, and you weren't bleeding out all over the place. They should have called a damn ambulance.
Yeah, and like the other thing with it all is like they were more worried about swabbing my mouth to get my drug test than me going to the hospital. Now, I don't know if they did a drug test on Megan because I haven't asked her, but they're going to when she gets back, I'm sure of that, which they have a full right to do. But I'm sorry, getting somebody to the hospital is more concerning than you taking a drug test to see if, because I lifted something wrong, I was high. And then around here in Wisconsin, it used to be where every time you'd go into an ER, they'd ask you if you keep guns in the house. Well, now most ERs and most doctors' offices don't do that anymore. Yeah, this hospital took me 15 minutes to tell them it's none of your damn business whether I keep guns in my house or not.
You can thank Obamacare for that, because that was one of the hidden things in there where doctors were supposed to ask you whenever you saw a doctor if you owned firearms or not.
Yeah, I messed with one time. I was in the ER for something stupid. It was a small. Megan just texted me they haven't done the drug test on her, but it was for a small little cut on my hand, and they were asking me, "Oh, well, do you have guns in your home?" and I started listing every single one of them that I had because I was coming from the security contractor. I had my gun and holster on the side of me because I did end up going in by ambulance for it. And if that was a whole nother thing, is apparently none of the nurses in the ambulance knew that how to take a firearm out of a holster and unload it. So they had to send security down. Security didn't know how to take it out of the holster and unload it. So eventually they call the local police department, and the local police department comes over and they're like, hey, we have to disarm you. We'll leave it with security and you can pick it up once you're done here. Fine.
Yeah,
but I'm like, okay.
The ER my wife works at, they have a sheriff's deputy.
An officer on
Yeah, there's a police officer either from the sheriff's department or the city police up there. I think she said that if they have something like that happens, they're the ones that handle the fire and somebody having a firearm on them automatically. That they don't call security, they don't have the emergency personnel or anybody handle it. The officer that's there on duty handles that.
Yeah, and see, that's the smart thing to do. Is it's like, I get that if people don't know how to handle firearms or anything like that, like I get that. Not everybody's into guns and not everybody's ever dealt with them, but I kind of feel like if you're in that situation, or at least your security in a hospital should have some form of firearms training. Because like now the policy is at a lot of the hospitals around here is if you come in with a firearm, then they either have security or a sheriff's deputy or county cop come and or take the gun. And now most hospitals won't even store it into a secure facility, which I'm actually more okay with. I would rather have my gun go to the sheriff's department where I can pick it up than to someone in the hospital. But it adds an extra step on for somebody to pick up their firearm. Because I don't trust them.
Yeah, depending on the state, you might not get it back.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
In Maryland, so.
Yeah, it really is one of those things where you got to have the kind of risk with it. And that's why we talked about it. I think it was on this chat at some point with Gelsma. But one thing that I always kind of recommend to people is if you're in a car, maybe consider getting some type of holster or somewhere in your car where you can take your gun off and put it in there, because it's like, if you're in an accident, that's one less step that you have to go through that could prevent them from giving you cares if there's a firearm involved.
Flashing back to the very beginning of the show, when we were talking about alien gear, that's one of the things I like about alien gear holsters. They have that mount where you can take your actual carry holster off and clip it into that mount for use in your vehicle.
Yeah, and it's something that everybody's got their own preference and something they have to look into. But yeah, Megan said they didn't do a drug test on her yet because it's considered a near miss, even though she got hurt. They're considering it a near miss. So, but then they ask the typical questions: do you feel like harming yourself or somebody else? And my question is how many people that actually are planning that or feel that way are actually answering yes to that, you know?
Who knows? But what you're saying is it wasn't a hit or miss Tuesday nights 9 o'clock.
Yeah. All right. Well, I am actually going to hop out of the chat. I would like to kind of catch Outlaws a little bit, and I want to go check on Megan.
I wouldn't if I were you. They're talking about some weird shit over there. I came back over here.
That doesn't surprise me.
They're even dirty out black cat outdoor.
On that show.
All right, folks. Y'all stay safe, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks for having me.
Good luck.
Yeah, we're probably going to be wrapping this up anyway because we're just talking about a bunch of nonsense now. Well, other than your fiance getting hurt. I mean, your fiance getting hurt just totally took us out of the rabbit hole of nonsense, and we just went down in a more serious path again. So I guess I don't know if I want to say thank her for that, but
I wouldn't thank anyone for getting hurt, period.
No, but she gave us a serious topic to discuss again. But,
all right, folks.
Yeah, the circumstances weren't good, but yeah, you have a good one, Snowy.
Yeah, you too.
So, anybody, Gary, Night Strike, you got anything you want to talk about? If not, we can probably just go ahead and wrap this up because I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now.
No, I think I'm going to go ahead and hop out myself.
All I can think about is shall not be infringed. But you know what? That's hardwired, so I don't know.
Yeah, and I already gave you your plug, so you don't get another one.
The Friday Night Strike at 8 Eastern. There we go. Also, check out guntube.org. There we go. We're done.
You said about GunTube already.
Hey, I'm going to plug GunTube as much as I can so people will join on the platform. And you know what? We make a better YouTube than YouTube.
So go out there and upload your entire catalog to GunTube as soon as possible.
No, don't. Do not do that. Otherwise, I'm going to make Gary get me another hard drive, damn it.
What about you, Gary? You got anything you want to plug?
GizzardGary.com. Check me out. Thanks for the invite.
Yep, not a problem. They said you guys are welcome whenever you want. Just gotta let me and Tardot know.
Yes, sir.
So, and with that, guys, we will say good night, and everyone take care of yourselves, and see you on the next one.
Alrighty.
Of course, I can't turn this off, so Tardot's gonna have a chat that's just gonna go with nobody in it. Yeah, good night, guys.
I'm surprised your internet stayed on this long.
Yeah, it's worked perfectly tonight. I'm truly shocked.
Nobody must be at home in your area.
Who knows?
All right. Well, I'm getting out. I'll see you later. You have fun.
Yep. See you later.
Later.
Apparently it's on that.